Behold your new king, for he is the Lion King. Hey everybody, I'm Cortez, and I'm a critic, and we're talking about the Detroit Lions, as they were the Lion King, but just like Long Live the King, they got declawed, dethroned, and someone else became the king. So, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. It's gonna be hurtful. Thank you very much, Volpix. You can now go sit over here. You sit right there as I talk about them Lions. Detroit! Aha! I didn't expect to see you in our exit interview so early. Well, we kind of already booked your Super Bowl package to New Orleans. We started doing that basically after the draft. So, sad thing is that you have to cancel, and well, the window to cancel was 48 hours after you book it. You didn't, so we're gonna have to charge that to your guys' credit card. All the Super Bowl and NFC Championship merchandise we already made, so we're kind of shipping them to Somalia, like we do with all clothes and other, third world countries. So, yeah, just a little heads up. Don't ever do that again! Because this year was supposed to be your guys' year. Now, what's funny is that everyone was expecting Philadelphia and Detroit, and it sadly became that way. Except there was this very stingy Commanders team who just likes to ruin on everyone's parades. And they basically took care of two teams that were probably expecting to face each other again in the playoffs in Tampa and Detroit. On the road. But then went to Philadelphia and realized, oh no, I woke up, the dream is dead. So Detroit ended their season in the most un-Detroit way. But, like I said, sometimes excuses are better than admitting fault and apologies. Detroit had the worst injury bug to one side of the football I have ever seen. When Aiden Hutchinson went down with a broken tibula, is it tibula or fibula? Which one's broken again? Anyway, he was screwed, and basically just felt like every other week, more and more defensive players getting hurt. Some like Carlton Davis, former Buccaneer draftee, broken jaw or dislocated jaw. Like what the hell? And they're getting players that you'd be like, oh, I remember him. Wait, he's still playing in the league? And I had him at 13-4. They said, screw your noise, we go 15-2. And that 15-2, I think the record doesn't sound as good as they were. This was a team that had the epitome of, we have all the best toys. There were games they were blowing out like they were watching an SEC team take on a MAC school. Like, it was blowout of blowout. There were times where Jared Goff had like 20 completions and no incompletions. There were times where he had more touchdowns than incompletions. So, it was amazing how good this team was. Gibbs proved that his rookie year was not a fluke. And Montgomery proved they became Sonic and Knuckles. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to have that kind of combination. Good marketing ploy. And Campbell proved that last year wasn't a fluke. But I felt like with the injury bug, it made feel like the Lions feeling like the Rams of the 90s in the early 2000s with Warner, that they had to score a lot of points. To the point where when they scored so many points that their defense didn't have to save them. But this season was bad, and I kind of felt like it showed heavily with the Washington Commanders game in the playoffs, more so than any regular season game. because it kind of showcased that the Commanders weren't afraid to convert on fourth down, and with no pass rush, Jaden Daniels had all day to throw, and some of the plays were. And then when the Lions messed up with turnovers, including a pick six, it was game over, man, game over. So the Lions season was bad the way it ended, but I can't help but feel like I don't see this at the end. I'm not going to say it's like this, but it reminded me of the early Jordan days with the Bulls, where Detroit smacked them around. What happened? Instead of moping and bitching, Jordan got better. Jordan got stronger. Jordan put some muscles on his bones. And the Bulls took over the East and dethroned Detroit and became the threat. I'm not going to say Detroit's undestined to have a dynasty like the Bulls did with Jordan. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that every massive defeat motivates a good team. And I feel like this loss to the Commanders has more of a statement of focus than the loss to the 49ers the year before. So with that being said, your best game is any game you blew up by 100 points. Best game was week 10 at Houston. Now you're probably thinking, what? That's the best game? Hear me out. This was the game, which I think I labeled it as the Texans' worst game, is where Jared Goff realized, oh yeah, I'm mortal. 5 interceptions! A massive differential in turnovers between the two teams, and the Texans blew it, or the Lions recovered. Depends on which organization, the Houston Chronicles or the Detroit Times. Now, I don't know those are real. I could just make it up right now. The point is, which narrative would you prefer? Also, if you're not a fan of either of these franchises, do you prefer the Houston choking the game, or you prefer Detroit resilience in a comeback after an abysmal performance? Which narrative sounds better? I always feel like depends, which do you like? Do you like the comeback story, or do you like the blow up story? Is the Patriots 28-3 a comeback story or a Falcon failure? Is the Oilers' failures in Buffalo the greatest comeback in NFL history, or the greatest collapse in a playoff game in NFL history? All depends on which narrative you wish to speak, and also which newspaper or organization you support, and also which fan base. I would like to go on the realm of resilience, because this is probably the first time Detroit was facing adversity on its own actions. There's a difference when your team just gets outplayed, outmuscled by a superior team. There's a difference is when you are the person causing the mistakes, like turnovers, mainly interceptions, and basically saying, I have thrown 5 interceptions. I don't remember the last time a quarterback threw 5 interceptions and won. I remember one that threw 5 interceptions in the Super Bowl named Rich Gannon, and 3 were pick sixes. 2 led to 2 field goals. So all those interceptions led to points. And I'm sure he was thought very fondly after that. So in my humble opinion, this is the best game because I believe the narrative that the Lions showed resilience more than the Texans collapsing. Plus, this is the Lions video, so of course I'm going to give the Lions the props. This to me is their best game on the road and against a much more favorable team, and they made a comeback after blowing 5 interceptions. That to me is the better story, and that's why I think it's the best game. Good teams don't win bad games. That's the point. Your worst game, on the other hand, was a little bit more firepower-ish. Week 15 versus Buffalo. This is the game I like to call, wow, we do miss our defense game. This game was fun if you weren't a fan of either one of these teams, which I weren't. I wasn't a fan. The only reason why I probably was upset the Lions lost is because as a Buccaneer fan, the one loss to Tampa made me feel like, hey, we're the only team that beat Detroit. Ha ha ha. And then Buffalo did, and you're like, we still did it first. Very childish of me, I know, very mature. But this one was more on the grounds of, so we know the Bills' offense can score, but the Lions' defense can't stop them. And the Lions offense, we know they can score. And it seems like the Bills couldn't stop them. So this was a game where I feel like both defensive corners' hot seats just got a little hotter. Just be thankful that the Bills were the one that actually won the game. But this was more of a, yep, injuries have come back to bite them. And even I was feeling like, I don't know, guys. I don't know. The Rams, Philadelphia, even Tampa's offense was in the top 10. If these teams come in with their offensive firepower, this might be a problem for the Lions. I mean, we know their offense can score, but if their defense can't make stops consistently, yes, it might be a shootout, but it could be the team with the ball last, and the team that has the ball last is not the Lions. That might be the way it ends. They drive down the field, score the last points of the game, and clock runs out, and, good night, sweetheart. It's over. So this is the worst game, not because it was a loss, it's because it just kind of openly showed that, okay, you guys can score 40 points, but the other team can score over 40 points too. And that's not the way to go, and especially against so-called the best teams in the playoffs coming up. So to me, this was the worst game for the fact that the Lions defense was heavily exposed and that it really made us feel, at least for some, I don't know, guys. I don't feel as confident this year in the playoffs as I was last year. Your MVP, I'm giving it to Jared Goff. For the same reason I gave Jared Goff the credit for the comeback against the Texans. There were games where he would throw 4 touchdown passes and have like 3 incompletions. There were times where the offense was not just run the ball, hope to God. Jared Goff commanded his team. He had a 72.4 completion rating, nearly 4,700 yards passing, 37 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. That's a hell of a performance from a guy who basically was kicked to the curb and was the first overall pick by the Rams years ago. I think Jared Goff has found a home in Detroit, and every week and every season he has proven that his self-worth. That's why stories like Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, all these stories are really good to hear because it just gives you that resilience, and also kind of makes you be like, so it wasn't my fault I suck, it was you guys' fault that sucked. Now I feel like the Rams can say, yeah, but we won a Super Bowl with the guy we traded from you, so yeah. And Matthew Stafford probably saying to Detroit, you guys suck, that's why I couldn't be my best. Well, he was one of the greats in Detroit, record-wise, stats-wise. So anyway, the narrative point of the story is good to see quarterbacks that get a second chance, third chance, fourth chance, whatever, another chance to succeed in a different team that gives them the chance, and they thrive. And I think that's what makes all sports great to see, is second chances or multiple chances by players. The ones that don't have like the domestic violent problems, or those that have like the obvious red flags off the field, off the court, off the ice, whatever, a chance to thrive, and then they do. That should make us all feel that, hey, we can still succeed in different parts of our life without having to just say, well, the first chance I got, I screwed it, so I guess I go home and retire, and hopefully God I don't die from malnourishment. So Jared Goff is your MVP for the Lions, and rightfully so. Now, the grade I will give the Lions, injury bug plagued them. They went to the divisional. They were number 1 seed. Everything was going their way. We all thought they'll be better. They didn't. They had a worst bad game at the worst time in the playoffs. Focusing on regular season, if I could a little bit more, I will still say this season is a success because it didn't show that the year before when they went to the NFC Championship game against the 49ers was a fluke like the Jaguars did when they went to the AFC Championship game. To me, this was not a fluke. So I will give the Lions a success, even though they didn't go as far as they did, but with the injuries and everything, I just can't help but feel like the negative playoff game should not dictate the season that was successful. So I'm going to give this team, or in this argument, success. The draft picks. Because Hudson was so successful, and I kind of feel like they kind of addressed their secondary issues in the linebacker ones. I feel like, let's get more pass rushers. So Jack Sawyer, edge from Ohio State. James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. And Nick I can't pronounce his last name. Nick Scarton, edge, Texas A&M. Basically, give Aiden Hutchinson a buddy. A buddy. For those of you that remember, who remember the Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis team up in Indianapolis? These two teams were the sack masters. They were so good for the Colts. I think if the Lions get that, one, it will help out a secondary, and two, it will. I mean, you're going against, potentially an dual offenses powered. Whoever the Vikings quarterback is, they still have Jefferson and Addison. Okay, the Packers have Jordan Love, and of course, the Bears have Caleb Williams and his loving fingernails. And of course, whatever they decide Benny Johnson's going to do, which is another reason why I'm thinking, maybe we need to get something to go against Benny Johnson's offense. So, therefore, pass rusher. So, to me, Lions, I would say get a number 2 pass rusher to go with Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson can take care of the game himself, but having him a number 2, oh my goodness, that would help. Because I feel like that might be the biggest thing. I'll be like, let's just get another one. Not because we're trying to do it as an insurance policy for Aiden Hutchinson in case he gets injured again, but the fact that how dangerous can the Detroit Lion team be when they're sacking quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, drive in and drive out. So I think that might be more of a key focus, at least in my opinion, for the Lions, is another pass rusher, and another young one too. Aiden Hutchinson's not that old. So yeah, and that's the Lions. That's what I think. The NFC North is over. The whole North is over. Now we're going to focus on it. We have two sides, the West and the East. The East, because the Philadelphia saves the best for last. That means we will not talk about the East next. That means we're going to go from the North and we're going to go to the West. And we're going to stay in the NFC side because that's how we do it here. So we're going to go to the NFC West and we're going to go to the desert as we're going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals to start the NFC West conversation recap. And until next time, I'm Cortez and I'm a critic. Thank you so very much for watching.